The aerial bombing of the small town in northern Spain in 1937 was part of the Spanish Civil War, which took place from 1936 to 1939. The conflict arose between the Republican government, supported by various left-wing factions, and the nationalist rebels led by General Francisco Franco. Guernica was painted in 1937 as an anti-war protest in response to the aerial bombing of the Spanish Civil War in northern Spain. It soon rose to prominence as one of Pablo Picasso's most well-known Cubist works, and for good reason. Guernica hit home like a bolt of lightning for those who saw it in 1937, with international tensions running high in World War I looming on the horizon. Its monochrome color scheme, dramatic contrast, and huge, brutal images are visceral, gripping, and unforgettable even today. Guernica's collection of wounded and dying figures, which are depicted in stark black, white, and gray on a large canvas, have the most striking visual impact. Although the bombing of Guernica, the inspiration for this painting is well known. Picasso also incorporated a great deal of symbolism to convey deeper meaning for both himself and the Spanish people. Picasso eventually made it all stark white, black, and gray, because he didn't want color to detract from his message. He first intended to leave the crimson tear he had painted on the woman's face. It makes sense why he did that, since, with the absence of color, there's neither a distraction from what you are viewing nor an inadvertent or intentional focus point. When you see the mural-sized painting in person, it overwhelms you with too many images to assimilate. The more you come close to it, the more the horrors of war consume you. In particular, the painting's center is a mess of sharp shapes that clash violently against one another. The structure of Guernica is one of a core triangle of struggle, with more intimate horrors on the left and right. In the aforementioned detail, a mother is seen sobbing over her dead child on the left. A human is immersed in the flames of a burning structure on the right, which is made even more terrifying by the building's cold, white, and black colors. A peaked roof is flipped on its side in one location. A structure is burning there. The burned out of a city is surrounded by vacant entrances and windows that gape like missing teeth and empty eye sockets. The background of this artwork accurately depicts the town of Guernica, which was leveled by Luftwaffe bombers, while the individuals and symbols are a commentary on war in general. Picasso positioned a rearing horse in the middle of the picture. It has bulging eyes and protruding fangs, and its countenance is so agonized that you could almost hear it cry. You might even miss the spear that is penetrating the horse from back to front. A bull on the left appears to be protecting the mother and kid, or perhaps it hovers over them like the aftermath of a battle, while a bird is barely audible in the background, screaming at the sky. While the bull may represent conflict, or perhaps bullfighting, alluding to both Spain specifically and the desire for power in general, I think the suffering horse is a metaphor for the unjustified deaths that conflict frequently results in for the defenseless. Even more interesting is how the handheld oil lamp stands in stark contrast to the overhead electric bulb, which casts a harsh glare. Picasso purposefully positioned those two components exactly next to one another. In short, he's illustrating the grim reality of progress. Despite all the benefits, electricity, cars, planes, etc., it also brings death and ruin.
The dying infant on its mother's arms represents the innocent suffering, just like the dying horse does. And throughout the rest of the artwork, we only see the horrors of war. Huge, bloated, and damaged limbs are present. Eyes are wide in fear, brows are furrowed in agony, and mouths gape in silent cry. At the bottom of the picture, a single warrior is broken and mutilated and is being trampled by dying horse above him. His shattered sword lies in his arm, held apart from his body. In Guernica, there is no comfort in mankind. Only death and ruin are present.
Picasso completed Guernica in just 35 days. which is an amazing feat for such a massive piece, especially one that has left such a lasting impression on history. Pablo Picasso, a master painter, sculptor, printmaker, ceramicist, etching artist, and writer, was a major influence on 20th century art. During his 92 years on Earth, he experimented and innovated, and his work evolved from the naturalism of his youth through Cubism, Surrealism, and beyond, influencing the direction of modern and contemporary art through the decades. Picasso was born in Spain and spent the majority of his adult life there. Despite this, he was the first child of Don José Ruiz y Blasco and Mara Picasso y López, and was born in the Spanish town of Malaga in the Andalusia region. Despite having been reared as a Catholic, he eventually declared himself an atheist. Picasso's father was a self-taught artist who made a fortune by portraying birds and other game animals. He was the curator of the neighborhood museum and also taught painting workshops. When Pablo was 7 years old, Don José Ruiz y Blasco started teaching him how to paint and draw, and he thought he was a good student. In the age of 13, Picasso enrolled in the School of Fine Arts in Barcelona, where his father was a professor. Picasso started his studies at Real Academia de Bellas Artes de San Fernando in Madrid, which at the time was the best art school in Spain, in 1897. Picasso only stayed for a short time because he preferred to explore the Prados art collection and study works by Rembrandt, Johannes Vermeer, El Greco, Francisco Goya, and Diego Velázquez. Picasso made portraits throughout this formative time in his life, such as his sister, Lola's First Communion. His stylist landscapes started to show signs of symbolism and his own interpretation of modernism as the 19th century came to an end. Picasso initially visited Paris, the hub of the European art scene. In 1900, he lived together with Max Jacob, a poet and journalist, who fostered the artist. The two were so poor that they occasionally had to burn the artist's paintings to remain warm. Picasso soon moved to Madrid, where he remained for the majority of 1901. Together with his friend Francisco Aces Soler, he co-founded the literary journal Young Art, contributing essays with illustrations and caricatures that were sympathetic to the underprivileged. By the time the first issue was published, the budding artist had switched from signing his paintings from Pablo Ruiz y Picasso to Picasso. Blue Period. Between 1901 and 1904, Picasso produced his Blue Period works art. The artist mainly used blue hues at this time, with accent colors appearing here and there. For instance, a guitar in a warmer brown tone can be seen among the blue colors in the classic 1903 painting, The Old Guitarist. Due to their muted tones, Picasso's Blue Period paintings are frequently interpreted as depressing. Picasso's Blue Period is mainly credited by historians to the artist's seeming depression following friend's suicide. The Blue Period frequently addresses issues like blindness, poverty, and female nudity. The Rose Period. The Rose Period spanned the years 1904 to 1906. Picasso's artwork had a warmer, less depressing feel than his Blue Period works because to the use of pink and rose tones. Among the common themes in these works of art are harlequins, clowns, and circus performers. During the Rose Period, he created Boy with a Pipe, one of his most popular pieces. The works from the Rose Period have elements of primitivism, which show Picasso's creative experimentation. African art. Picasso produced one of his most well-known and divisive pieces of art, Les Demoiselles d'Avignon. Between 1907 and 1909, during his African art and primitivism periods, Picasso's art during this time period mirrored these inspirations and was influenced by the angular African art he saw in an exhibition at the Palais de Trocadero, and by an African mask owned by Henri Matisse. Ironically, when Picasso first showed Les Demoiselles d'Avignon to his close circle, Matisse was one of the most outspoken critics. The artist collaborated with fellow painter Georges Braque from 1907 through 1912 to produce the earliest pieces of the Cubist movement in art. They use an earthy color scheme in their paintings. The artworks show disassembled things with intricate geometric shapes. Many of the artist's Cubist paintings featured Fernande Olivier, his 7-year love interest, including Head of a Woman, Fernanda, 1909. According to historians, she also acted in Les Demoiselles d'Avignon. Their relationship was turbulent, and in 1912 they permanently parted ways. Picasso lived throughout this time period from 1912 until 1919. Picasso continued to produce Cubist-inspired art, but he also included new elements such as collage in some of his pieces. In addition, he included the human figure into many Cubist works, such as Majoli, 1911, 1912, and Girl with a Mandolin, 1910. Picasso remained in his studio during the war years, despite the fact that many of the artists he knew departed Paris to fight in World War I. By the time his romance with Fernande Olivier was over, he had already found love with another lady. They were united until her unexpected death from TB in 1915. Eva Goul, the subject of his 1911 painting Woman with a Guitar, passed away. Then Picasso entered a brief partnership with only a year-long relationship with Gaby de Pere Lespinasse. He dated Picorette, a 20-year-old actress, and Irene Legut for a short time, each in 1916-17. Soon after that, he met Olga Koklova, a Russian ballet dancer whom he later wed in 1918. 3 years later, they had a son together. Although the relationship between the artist and the ballerina rapidly deteriorated, Picasso refused to grant Koklova a divorce because doing so would have required him to give her half of his fortune. Till her passing in 1955, they remained legally wed but not in reality. Picasso's art underwent a dramatic stylistic transition between 1919 and 1929. Neoclassical works by the artist stand in stark contrast to Cubist works created during the artist's first trip to Italy and the end of World War I. One example is the watercolor peasant sleeping, 1919, which depicts a return to order in art. However, as the French Surrealist movement gained popularity in the mid-1920s, Picasso started to return to his love of primitivism with works like Three Dancers, 1925, which were heavily influenced by the Surrealist movement. The 46-year-old artist met Marie. There's Walter, a Spanish teenager who was just 17 years old in 1927. They started dating, and Marie, the Ries, became pregnant with Maya, Picasso's daughter. They were together until 1936, and she served as the inspiration for the artist's Vollard Suite, a set of 100 neoclassical etchings finished in 1937. In the late 1930s, Picasso started dating the photographer and artist Dora Mayer. Picasso remained in Paris, which was occupied by Germany during World War I, and endured Gestapo harassment while working on his art. In the years between 1939 and 1959, he produced more than 300 works of poetry. Additionally, he finished 2 plays: The Four Little Girls and Desire Caught by the Tail. Picasso started dating the much younger art student Françoise Gillat after Paris was freed in 1944. They had a daughter named Paloma in 1949 and a son named Claude in 1947. But because of Picasso's ongoing infidelity and abuse, their relationship was doomed to fail like so many of his prior ones. During this time, he concentrated on sculpture, taking part in an international exhibition at the Philadelphia Museum of Art. In 1949, the Chicago Picasso, a sculpture he later made on commission, was donated to the American city. The artist Jacqueline Roquet then 27 years old, for the second and final time in 1961, when he was 79 years old. She turned out to be one of the biggest influences on his career. During the last 17 years of his life, Picasso painted more than 70 portraits of her. The artist had a burst of inventiveness when his life was about to end. His past approaches combined to create the final pieces, which featured vibrant paints and copper etchings. Picasso's final works contained elements of neo-expressionism, which art historians eventually recognized. Love him or hate him, Pablo Picasso changed art forever. Support this channel by subscribing, smash the notification bell for amazing more videos, and leave a comment. Thank you.